Hello and welcome to this short presentation on crisis management. And I'm just sharing this presentation. I actually did this presentation at my local networkers meeting about 3 weeks ago. And here we are, maybe about a month ago now, but here we are in a place of crisis. And this is a global crisis, but it's how do we deal with that crisis? And I hope that this simple presentation will give you some tools to think about, or will give you some hope that you can dive deep into some of the skills that you maybe didn't think you had. What I did find from the networkers group was that some of the participants, they went on to utilize some of the tools that very same day. So I'm here to share this little video of this little short presentation of crisis management. So I'm going to share my screen now with the presentation. Here we go. And we'll just start the slideshow from the beginning. So here it is. So this is who I am. I'm Phyllis Brown. I am a business mentor and a personal mentor, and have been helping people dealing with anxiety, stress, crisis management, all sorts of things over the last 30 plus years. So with the networkers, we have to give a presentation every now and then. So I thought I would choose this one to say back a few months ago. So here we are. I'm going to take you through the presentation. So we'll just start. So I want you to think about, well, what constitutes crisis in business or your day, because each of us have different ways of dealing with crisis. And the word crisis could be different things. You know, somebody might find that they've lost a beloved piece of jewelry. That's a crisis in their life. Whereas other people might find that their main source of income has now disappeared. That's a crisis. So everybody has a right to own their own crisis, and there's a level of crisis. And as we've seen through the COVID-19 process, we've been level 1, level 2, level 3, and now we're at level 4, and that's a different level of crisis. So I just want you to think about the word crisis. And think about these questions. I asked these questions in the networking group, and then when we separated into our smaller groups, it was to talk about the last time that you felt powerless. Did it lead to anger, frustration, or resentment? And I would imagine for some of you, there'd be anxiety in there right now. You might be angry. You might actually be angry that you've been restricted and you can't do your normal things. You might be frustrated because you've decamped into your new workspace, but you maybe left some key componentry or things that you need are elsewhere. And resentment, I definitely feel that people here in this particular country were a little bit resentful that people have come in from overseas, and that's where the infection has come from. It wasn't obviously here beforehand. So I do get that impression from Facebook that people are quite annoyed when our health minister stands there going, well, we've got another case of COVID-19 from an overseas connection. So that's a crisis. That's a crisis in your life. Think about when the last time you felt those things, when you felt powerless. When was the last time you had lack of focus? Did this lead to missing deadlines or no forward movement? And lack of focus can happen. You're all now having to adapt to a new workplace, adapt to a new rhythm, adapt with different distractions, okay? So we'll have, I know for myself, I'm quite happy working from home. I have a distraction where my husband's now working from home and he's walking up and down the hallway, and that could be a distraction for me. Some of you will be dealing with children, they could be a distraction. Some of you could be dealing with pets. I know for myself, when I'm working from home, 10 o'clock, one of the cats will come in, absolutely insist on having cat cuddles at 10 o'clock. So that's our time. The door pops open and she comes, can't do anything. She's standing over all of my paperwork on my keyboard, won't go away until she gets her cat cuddles. It usually lasts about 3 or 4 minutes. Then she's like, right, I'll see you later. And off she pops. So distractions that you're maybe not used to through working in this different environment. And it could be something as silly as a cat, just desperate for a cuddle. It could be anything really. And do you have a strategy for dealing with crisis within your business or your work day? And what is your number one go-to? So we're now having to work slightly differently. I've developed strategies. I've always worked distantly. I've always been an area manager or a regional manager. So I've always worked at a distance. Some of it, you know, thousands of miles away when I worked as a regional manager in the UK. So I covered all of Scotland, all of the north of England and Northern Ireland. And as you can imagine, you can't just deal with a crisis that is happening in any of those parts of the country. You have to learn some strategies to help you cope. So that is something for you to think about as we go through this presentation today. So the definition of crisis, Number one, a time of intense difficulty or danger, and that's definitely where I would say we are all at right now. It is an intensely difficult and dangerous time. Living in Christchurch, we've come through not only 2 major quakes, we've come through quite a strategic and quite a large terrorist attack. Actually, Christchurch still has quakes. I think we'd have 4.6 just the other day. So I suppose for us in this particular town or city, we've developed different strategies around all that. We can feel into the intensity of that difficulty or that danger. But COVID-19 is definitely number one. Number two, a time when a difficult or important decision has to be made. And some of you might be there right now. Do I have to leave my family? We have left our son in a different location. He is isolated. We are isolated. That is a difficult decision. Out of this intense difficulty or dangerous situation, some of you who are in business are having to make really difficult decisions, paying people off, reducing hours, maybe having to go into liquidation, having to cut out suppliers. What are the different crisis options that you're looking at, and how can you negate those decisions, or how can you deal with those decisions? So 1 and 2 definitely is where I would imagine a lot of you are right now. A crisis supposedly occurs when an individual loses his bearings and can no longer find a meaning in his life or his situation. I feel for some people, this one, if you have been made redundant, this is where you are right now. If you have a routine that really fulfills your life, and that you can't do that, then you've lost your bearings. If your routine is you always go to the gym, or you always visit your mum each day, what routines have you got that you've maybe lost access to? That actually could be a personal crisis, and that hasn't to be downplayed, because routine in our life do give us a sense of purpose. That's what routine does. And number 4, and this is a different kind of crisis, number 4 is a meaning, is something that gives life purpose, that animates and energizes the individual. And that's where 3 and 4 go together, in that sense of routine, your sense of identity, your sense of power within your situation has been removed. So therefore the meaning has gone. And so, well, what happens now? Because meaning does create a sense of purpose. Meaning does motivate us. In that last 2 aspects, I want you to think about some of the routines that you can do within your own living situation. So if you were someone who went to the gym every single day religiously at 6 o'clock or at 5 o'clock or at 1 o'clock, whatever time it was, then don't give that up. Look for that online on YouTube. There's lots of routines on there that you can do, even if it's your Tai Chi or your Qigong. If it's like me, my aerobic exercises, good old Jane Fonda, get in there with Jane, and I'm doing my mile a day. And that mile a day, that gives meaning to my life, and it gives me a sense of purpose, and it definitely energizes me. I have to say, because she's very funny. So think about what is it that you can transfer, especially those ritualistic things that you would do on a day-to-day basis and not really give it much thought. But now that you've been cut off from those ritualistic things, you might find that you will go into a personal crisis mode. So adapt, and if you can do things online, then do things online, especially that physical fitness thing, because it will just get that amazing adrenaline hormones going. And I think if you have been made redundant, if you have moved into 3 and 4, set yourself a purpose of recreating who you are, thinking about what are my skills, are they transferable, can I update my CV, how can I plan for a better future, start to put meaning into your life. Having been made redundant 3 times, I really do know what that feels like. Having lost a business overnight twice through the September and the February quakes, I do know what that feels like as well. So strategize and creating a sense of purpose, or giving yourself meaning. And for 3 and 4, if the world has stopped turning and suddenly you've hit that brick wall, just take a deep breath and think and come back to self and think about, well, who am I? What can I give? How can I adapt? Who can I give it to? And where are they? And that will help on level 3 and level 4. So the definition of crisis, as you can see, comes in many different levels, and all of you will be participating in some of those levels. Maybe some of you will be participating in all 4 levels of this particular definition. So here we go. That's what crisis means. Types of crisis. Natural crisis, so that's disturbances in the environment and nature lead to natural crisis. COVID-19 is definitely that. Technological is a crisis where we can't get the phone to work or the computer to go. My husband actually really doesn't have good internet, Wi-Fi here, so that's led to a bit of a crisis this morning. Crisis of organisational misdeeds. Now that's, we're looking at the government. Are they supporting us well enough? Has your organisation, are they supporting your needs? Or are they taking advantage of this situation? Crisis due to workplace violence. Certainly we are in a situation where some of you are on the, I'm going to say, on the front line of that, whether you're working as a care worker, emergency services, you know, crisis due to workplace violence can actually be there. Confrontation crisis, most of you will be really working through this. And crisis due to rumour, have you heard the latest? Wow, we've just had a toilet paper crisis. Don't know where that came from. I'm not quite sure where the toilet paper fiasco has come from, but it has made people behave in very peculiar and unnatural ways. Whether somebody was just stocking up and somebody else saw that, and somebody else saw that, and somebody else saw that, and bang, suddenly we have a shortage of toilet paper. That is a crisis due to rumour. Crisis of malevolence. Malevolence is where you feel you've been undermined, and that could be within an organisation with some misdeeds, could be confrontation with staff, with work colleagues who are undermining you. Passive aggressive behaviour is a crisis, that can create a crisis. And then finally we have bankruptcy. And some of you may be going through or having to make that very, very, very difficult and unwanted decision right now. So these are just types of crisis. And I want you to think about, well, where am I right now? What is happening? How can I prevent it? Who is causing my crisis, or what is causing my crisis, and how can I then negate the effects of that crisis. So here we go. I want you to think about a crisis within your business. You can use any of the examples of type of crisis to identify your last crisis situation. Now, I want you to think about the skills you developed to help overcome this situation. What resolutions did you find, and how did you deal with something similar? And I think it's really interesting for me as a long-distance manager. As I say, I covered this vast geographical area. It was just massive. And I couldn't get to those areas where a crisis had occurred. So if there was an accident within a shop, I couldn't rush down to Newcastle to be in that shop because I was up in Scotland. So for me, my crisis mode, or my strategy for dealing with crisis, is I would definitely listen to what was happening on the other end of the phone, or I'd read an email, and then I would just take a breath. I would actually write everything down or print the email off and really digest what I just heard or what I just seen. I would never step into reactionary mode. I would go into a reflection mode. So I would take a step back and just take a breath. If I was on the phone to a shop manager at that point in time, or a volunteer, I worked for a really large cancer research organisation. So I would tell them, I would really tell them and say, I've heard everything that you've said. I'm going to put the phone down now and I'll call you back in 5 minutes. And in that 5 minutes, when I disconnected from that person's tone, their anxiety, their stress, their excitement, anger, rage, resentment, whatever that emotion was, when I put the phone down and just took a breath, I could look at my notes and then think about who I needed to contact, what I needed to do, how I was going to do it, and when. So that who, what, how, and when. When we think about crisis, we need to think about who is going to help us, how we're going to help us, when are we going to get it, and what is it that we need to do to resolve it, the who, what, when, and how. And I would then go back and I would reconnect to that situation and then talk them through what it is that I'd set in place, who would be in touch, how they were going to do it, how we were going to resolve it, and when it was going to happen. So a crisis is really a list, making a list of actions that then will stem the flow or prevent either the situation happening again, the situation worsening, or it will resolve the situation altogether. That whole process of taking that 5 minutes, I have never actually let that go. And I find myself in an area manager or a national manager's perspective because my business is an online corporate massage business. So as you can imagine, I am in crisis mode because none of the therapists can go out. I have no income coming in. So I've got all of that. So what I did, who has it impacted? All of my clients. So I've been in touch with all of them and reassured them that we're going to be okay. What I'm giving them is I've given all of the clients and the therapists access to a free de-stress meditation just to see them through their time of crisis, and to know that we're here with a different type of workplace well-being solution. I've also said to both the therapists and my clients that once this is over, we'll be in touch and we'll be able to provide service or resume our service as normal. So thinking about who do you need to get in touch with? How are you going to do it? What are you going to offer? And when is that going to happen? And it can be really simple things from your suppliers. If you need to bring in supplies, being in touch with them. If you are a service like me, being in touch with the people that you provide a service for. Think about a strategy that will get you through that whole process. Tips with dealing with a crisis. If dealing with a long distance situation, write everything down in a logical sequence. dates, times and names, etc. And don't talk, really listen, stay as quiet as possible. By hearing about the crisis, this will allow the mind to really hear what is being said and will give you the time to formulate a resolution. And take a break, go into that sound space. That's what I'm talking about when I'll say to someone, I'm going to put the phone down right now, but I will be back in 5 minutes. They know they've been heard, and that's the key thing. If you have a staff member or a family member who is in crisis, telling them, I will be back in 5 minutes, I just need time to think, they know you've heard. They know that you've heard them, and sometimes that's quite comforting for someone. So taking that step back, and you're stepping away from that person's emotional process, it gives your own personality to have the ability to create sense of the situation. And I think that's the key thing. Don't get pulled into someone else's drama, because that drama belongs to them. It's taking a step back and coming back to what feels right for you. So tips on how not to deal with a crisis situation. Don't become an ostrich. Burying the situation will not resolve it. So now, I've done what everyone else has done. I've applied for government help. I've been in touch with all my suppliers. I've been really honest and upright. I've been in touch with financial institutes to help. Rather than waiting, I'm not a wait and see person. I am definitely, let's get in and get some solutions organised. Don't pass the buck. Take responsibility for your actions while holding others to account. Working from home shouldn't be any different from you all working in the same office. If you have deadlines to meet, if you have work colleagues who have deadlines to meet, if you have reports or information that needs to be up, it needs to be done timely, efficiently and effectively, then take responsibility. If that's on your work agenda, just because you're at home doesn't mean that you're slacking off. It means that you have to keep putting your part or playing your part within the business so the business can actually really efficiently function. I know from our own family business, I deal with all the finances, my husband deals with manufacturing, and my son deals with the marketing and the publicity. And we've really got a strategy for who is dealing with what right now, and we're revisiting it every 48 hours to make sure that we are actually following through and supporting not only ourselves but our team and our company. So don't pass the buck. If you are responsible for something which is absolutely key to the performance of your business or your company, then you need to do it. If you are dealing with a crisis, don't text on the phone. It has absolutely no bearing in how you can relate to someone. Plus, you have to think further down the line. If there has to be something like a disciplinary action, or we have to put into place different things that make people take responsibility, then you have to engage them properly. Now, we can't do face-to-face because we are in lockdown. We are in lockdown here in New Zealand. So email, absolutely. Do your FaceTime, your Skypes, your Zoom, your message, video phone calls, whatever it is, whatever medium you can use, then do that. Because I think when you're talking to someone, and I think we do have to be really kind to each other right now. For some people, working at home, it will be filled with lots of distractions. So therefore, you might not be able to complete things on time or in a timely fashion. But when you're having that face-to-face conversation, your body language, your persona, the tone of your voice, and they might actually see the distractions behind you, then that might reveal a lot about why things are in crisis mode. And the other thing, from a management perspective, don't fix other people's issues. They must learn. So mentor and monitor what is happening. So for those managers out there, where all our staff are now in different locations, we can't fix the problem. You can't go, I'll do it, because you can't. You're already working your own work schedule. We have very defined roles within our company, and nobody oversteps those boundaries, because how can they? All they're doing is creating issues for themselves. So for you, don't fix other people's problems, but tell them, how are you going to monitor it? How are you going to mentor them? When are you going to see an improvement? And what is it that you need to be teaching them? So mentoring them in working better, smarter, cleaner, or more effectively, efficiently, what is it that they need to do, how are we going to do it, when do we need results, and keep that process going. Over here on this side, in this little wheel here, is crisis management at basic levels. So listen to what people say and measure what, when, and how this issue is. Really measure it. Is it a level 4? Is it really urgent and important, or is it just important, or actually can it just be something that could be left to another week? So for me, I've already got my strategy for next week, because stuff that I want to get done doesn't need to be done this week. It can get done next week. So thinking about what the issue is and the level of crisis it is. Talk to people like they are people. So this being kind, be kind to each other. We're all adapting. We're all adapting to our home environment, which, our home is our home. It's an invasion of our space. This is where we come home. Our colleagues don't see our home. Only our friends and family see our home. So, you're invading our private space. We're working from our bedrooms, which is a really personal private space. We're working from the lounge, where there will be lots of background noise going on. Be really kind to people. Engage and build relationships, and be really patient with your staff if they do have lots of distractions going on and what's happening. Pets barking in the background, or teenage kids having a fight, in the hallway, or whatever it is. We've got to be really kind, but we can monitor and mentor our staff through that. So when is the best time to call? How do we call? How can we support you, and when do you want to see those resolutions happening? I think for big organisations, that water cooler moment, I talked about the third space, and a crisis for some staff could be isolation. They maybe live on their own, they have no partner, and they might be really isolated within their home. So that water cooler moment, could it be that you have a virtual coffee time, and that you avert that crisis of loneliness? You're going to create, that coffee Snapchat or that FaceTime round robin, where everyone gets on board on the video, and we're all talking about, well, how have you got on this morning, or how are you dealing with it? And we're having our coffee and our cake, and there's still a sense of normality. They're seeing and they're physically interacting with everyone. So engaging and building relationships can stave off more crisis than what we're dealing with right now. And I think as we go through the next 10 to 14 days, it will take that amount of time before we get into that rhythm of what this change actually means for our life. So that's the end of the presentation. What I would say to all of you, I was a training officer for the Imperial Cancer Research Fund. It's Cancer Research UK now, and the Royal Council on Cancer Research Fund, which is also part of Cancer Research UK. And one of the key things, or one of the key metrics that as a training officer we were taught to look for in human behaviour. And so it's the forming, the norming, the storming, then the norming, and then the grieving. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little presentation on that. I'm going to explain what that actually means for your staff, because it's a really interesting matrix. So I want you to hopefully join me again, Phyllis Brown, on my next video clip on business tips and tools, and we'll look at this formula, because once I go through it, it will all make sense, because you're going to need to think about this model of human behaviour, so that when things start to get into the storming stage, you know that then there's light at the end of the tunnel. So I hope you found my crisis management presentation useful. Sorry for the glare, but it is quite bright and sunny out there. But we'll see you the next time, and take care out there. Stay well, be kind, and stay safe. Bye for now.